Hello, we are on the cusp of 2025, and I'm here today to give you what I think are going to be the top 10 transits of the year. Now, 2024 has been no picnic, and I really think 2025 is going to be all about endings and beginnings. So we have a whole bunch of planets that will change signs. In fact, all of them will change signs next year. We have had Pluto go into Aquarius this year. And then next year, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune will also change signs, go into new signs. And all of those planets spend anywhere from a year with Jupiter to 20 years with Pluto in a sign. So a lot of time. And so having that many planets change sign is significant. Now, Jupiter and Pluto will enter their new signs and stay there, but Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune will go back into their old signs to finish up some work. So there's this endings and beginnings, this start and stop that I think we'll feel over the course of the next year. I think it'll be an interesting year. Hopefully not quite as charged as 2024, but definitely there will be some movements and definitely some shifting. I think once we get into 2026, we'll start to settle into whatever the new chapters really look like. But for now, we are in this transitionary period. And this is, I should say, a little bit unprecedented. This many outer planets changing signs in one year just doesn't happen very often. I believe it was Steve Jobs who looked back and said he could go back 5,000 years and he hadn't seen all of these planets change sign in such a short proximity, about 6 months. They will all change sign. So that's interesting and kind of telling about our, place in history and this time and just the changes that we do all feel, or I think we're all feeling coming in. Like, what's the next chapter look like? So it's an interesting year, and with that, let's get on, and I'll tell you what I think we can look forward to. All right, the first transit I, of course, want to bring up is the Mars retrograde. So we enter the Mars retrograde on December 6th, and this retrograde is about revising the way we act, rethinking the way we show up in the world and enact our will in the world. And it's in particular happening, and that revision is happening around the early degrees of Leo and the later degrees of Cancer. Is where it's going to, right now I'm recording this on December 6th. So right now it's in Leo, but it's going to go back into Cancer here pretty soon. Mars is going to go back into Cancer here pretty soon in the retrograde. So Mars retrogrades can be frustrating because we do like to go forward in life. We like to keep moving. And stopping and thinking is hard. And my intent is to do actually a longer video on this about the beauty of a Mars retrograde and about really like sitting in stillness and the importance of doing that. So look for that later. But in the meantime, just know that this time period when Mars is retrograde, which is between December 6th and February 23rd, we launching new things may or may not be productive. You may have to repeat things. You may the invitation may really to be still. It's interesting. Over the last several years, we've had, at least the last 2 years, we've started the year with a Mercury retrograde, which again is a time of stillness, but it's mental stillness. This is actually physical stillness, and it doesn't mean like drop your exercise programs or anything like that. No, keep going. But it just, there's something about revising and rethinking and reevaluating how it is we enact our will in the world that I think is the real invitation going into the year. And so I think this is the first major work that we're going to be asked to do in 2025. Really stopping and thinking and being still in ways that might feel uncomfortable. So know that that's how we're going to start the year and embrace it. All right, the next transit number 2, that I think will be really significant this year is the Mars-Pluto opposition. So the Mars and Pluto will form this opposition 3 times. So the first time was right before the election in the US in November. And that opposition was with in Cancer and Capricorn. Mars was in Cancer, Pluto was in Capricorn. So right at the ending degrees of that sign. So on January 3rd and then on April 26th, Mars will oppose Pluto, but Mars will be in Leo and Pluto will be in Aquarius. And so I'm wondering if that's not going to be a little bit of a different story. So when Mars and Pluto oppose each other, it's sort of the the unstoppable force against the immovable object. It's so it can be contentious. It can bring up some tension at a minimum. Again, Mars is our will and how we enact it in the world, and Mars is retrograde, so frustrated with that energy. And then Pluto is really about digging deep and soul searching and going into the depths of ourselves, of society, of everything around us, and really bringing up things that aren't working to expose them to the light and hopefully make them work better. So that those transits I think will be interesting and powerful. And so those are the second transits that I think we really need to watch for this year and see how they're showing up in our lives. Again, look at those. For now, the early degrees of Leo are really where this is going to show up. In the first couple degrees of Leo are where that opposition is going to take place. So if you've got planets there or planets in any of the other fixed signs, so Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius, any of those signs, and if you've got planets at early degrees, this opposition might show up for you in a little bit more strong a way. But for all of us, I think it's going to be that like balance of power, that power struggle, that power dynamic, and how we show up in that. And it might, I think even illustrate. The sign of Leo is the ruler, the sign of Aquarius is the people, and so societally there could be some of that energy going on, the ruler versus the people, or the ruler and the people standing on opposite sides of some kind of platform and looking at each other, projecting things on each other. I think it could be some interesting, difficult energy for ourselves in our own lives. It can be this energy of how do I shine in the world and how do I participate in community? Where am I an individual and where am I part of a group, and how we negotiate all of that. So look for that, certainly starting the year off, January 3rd, and then a repeat in April. Now, usually larger planetary transits like this frequently happen 3 times. The first time is kind of the shot across the bow, like this is what the story is going to be. And in the US, most of us felt that as an election that for about half of us didn't go the way we wanted it to go. And so that's an interesting story. And what was happening in your life around that time, around the beginning of November? What was happening? It'll be interesting to see what themes come up. So the first time is kind of that initial, like, this is what we're working with, this is what we're working on. The second time is some integration, like, okay, I know what the story is, and now I can take a step forward. I can work through it in a different way. And then the third chapter is kind of the culmination of the energy. The package is complete. You kind of know how you want to work with this energy and how you want to take it forward. So look for that. Those are going to be big transits starting the year off. Number 3, the nodes of fate are going to enter into Pisces and Virgo on January 11th. So we do start the year off, even though Mars will be retrograde. We're pausing and rethinking in some ways. There are a lot of changes to start the year off. So the nodes of fate are kind of our underlying emotional story, or our underlying maybe karmic or fated kind of themes. The kind of, it's a background beat, I guess. And so the nodes The nodes have been in Libra and Aries. They spent about 2 years in a sign, so they have been in Libra and Aries. And early in 2025, they're going to move into Virgo and Pisces. So there is some emphasis where the nodes are, and there is some interest in and some push to do some kind of cosmic resets. Like, are we on the right path? So particularly if you've got planets in the late degrees of Virgo or Pisces, the nodes move backwards to the way we usually think about the zodiac. So in the later degrees of Virgo and Pisces, you are likely to maybe experience some course corrections around as this comes into meet your planets. Over the next couple of years, the nodes will move throughout Virgo and Pisces. So could also affect planets that are square, so maybe Gemini and Sagittarius as well, but definitely Virgo and Pisces. There's going to be some course correction that is possible for us in that part of our chart, particularly if we've got planets in those signs. So the nodes changing signs is significant. Another reason this is significant, which we'll get to in a little bit, is where the nodes are is where the eclipses are. And eclipses do bring change. So that's another significant reason to kind of take note of where the nodes are. So again, Virgo and Pisces, some kind of course correction or karmic shifts can be expected. And societally, we usually see some kind of focus in that area. And lasts about 2 years. And then we'll move into the nodes will move into Leo and Aries, or Leo and Aquarius in a couple of years, which of course we have all this Plutonian action in. So it will be interesting. Actually, before I move on from that, with the nodes in Virgo and Pisces, we have Saturn and Neptune in Virgo and Pisces right now, and so the nodes are going to impact those planets just in the general sky. So that will be impactful, and we will we'll feel those cosmic course corrections through that energy. All right, let's look at number 4, the fourth transit that I think we will want to take note of this year. And this is that Venus will go retrograde. And that will happen between March 1st and April 12th. So if you remember, Mars is going to be retrograde through February 23rd. And then Venus goes retrograde on March 1st. So we have about a week in there where both those planets will be going forward, but only a week. So a Venus retrograde is different than a Mars retrograde. Venus retrogrades least often of any of the planets. And when it retrogrades, it will do that stationing on Saturn. Right? It will pass over Saturn, so it'll kind of drill down on that Venus-Saturn interaction. It will also cross Neptune in that period, and so there's an interesting mix of love and structures and really feeling into a sacred container. So lots of things around those themes. The Venus retrograde is going to be in Aries and Pisces. So Venus will go into Aries and then retrograde back into Pisces. And in Pisces is where it will, I believe, now that I'm saying that, it might be, I'm not going to say that because I'm not positive. I know it'll meet Neptune in Pisces, and I believe it meets Saturn in Pisces as well, but they may meet in Aries. Anyway, when Venus is retrograde, we are asked to do retrograde things, revise, reevaluate, redo items around what we love and who we love and how we spend our time and what we value, how we spend our money, any of those kinds of things. The conventional kind of folk wisdom around Venus retrogrades is don't change your hair, don't change your wardrobe, don't redesign your house, none of those things, no remodeling, no plastic surgery. And I think with any retrograde, it's really a time to reevaluate and rethink and not necessarily have that be a hard and fast rule. So but keep it in mind if you're feeling like bangs between if you're feeling like bangs in April through the middle of March, March through the middle of April, maybe hold off, maybe wait on that until after Venus goes direct, and then if you still want the bangs, go for it. So that's my number 4 transit that I think we will want to watch for in 2025. The 5th transit is, of course, the eclipses. So the spring eclipses are the 14th and the 29th of March, and they are happening in Virgo and in Aries because we're in this period where the nodes are changing signs. And so typically the eclipses would be in Virgo, and Pisces, but because of the nature of where the sun is and where the nodes are, they're going to be in Virgo and Aries in the spring. So eclipses are harbingers of change. If you have any personal planets in the late degrees of Virgo or Pisces, the early degrees of Aries and Libra, worth note, there could be some shifting in there, some invitations. Eclipses don't always happen on the day. Like, it's not energy that just it's not that kind of energy. Usually there's a seeding moment when the eclipse happens and then something plays out over, it depends on who you talk to, but 6 months or so. But eclipses are always about change. And I'm going to get a cat here, so that's always helpful. Here he is. Anyway, keep moving, Jinx. Keep moving. I want to pause and get Jinx. Oh, no, now he's going the other way. Okay, keep going. All right. Sorry about that. It's the Jinx sighting. All right, what is number 6 on my list? The 6th transit that I think is definitely worth note is that Neptune enters Aries on March 30th. So Neptune spends a good chunk of time in a sign. It moves reasonably slowly. And so it has been in Pisces. I didn't write down the date. Cat. I didn't write down the date, but it will enter Aries at the end of March. And it will be in Aries for only a brief period of time. So it'll be from the end of March to October 22nd. Neptune will be in Aries, and then it's going to, Neptune will be in Aries, and then it's going to retrograde back into Pisces through the rest of 2025, and then in 2026, it will return to Aries where it will stay. So we're just going to get a glimpse of what this is going to look like. In general, Neptune is about compassion and higher love, and Aries is the warrior. So Neptune in Aries becomes a compassionate warrior, or a thoughtful or a thoughtful actor, or thoughtful action. The planet is the subject, so it's Neptunian action, that higher love, that cosmic consciousness being done in an Aries kind of way. So a more forceful kind of way, or a more a more direct kind of way than Neptune might typically be. Neptune in Aries can look a little bit like fundamentalism. It can be very much like, I have the one true way, and I'm really set on bringing it to the world. So it can be very much about fighting for a cause, or really like digging in, and oftentimes in a really beautiful, positive way. But it's something we should look for, something we should keep in mind, that we can be overly dogmatic sometimes when Neptune is in Aries. So so look for action guided by morals, compassion, but not necessarily common sense. So something to think about. Again, Neptune is going to dip its toe in, and then it's going to move back out. But then in 2026, it will go into Aries for good. So we will get a glimpse of what this is going to look like. All right. Number 7, and connected. Saturn will enter Aries on April 24th. So Saturn is the structures in our lives. It's about maturity. It's about that strict, exacting teacher. Saturn knows exactly what our potential is and generally isn't inclined to let us not live up to our potential. And Saturn will be in Aries from April 24th through September 1st. So like Neptune, it's going to dip into the next sign and then move back. And one of the really interesting things this summer, the interesting things about this is we are coming into a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which will happen in Aries. And over the summer, it will get to within a minute of each other. They will be very, very close, but they will not meet exactly until both of them go back into Aries in 2026. So, Saturn and Neptune coming together are, the solidification and the dissolution. And I'm hearing astrologers start to talk about oftentimes UFO sightings, things like that come up when Saturn and Neptune are together. With Neptune and Aries, and Saturn and Aries, it could be something around, like again, we've talked about with Pluto and Aquarius, this building the more perfect union. It could be. It'll be interesting to see how this one plays out and how that time period plays out. I'm curious about summer and what it will look like when Saturn and Neptune are that close together. So stay tuned. Look for that over the summer. Then on June 9th, Jupiter moves into Cancer. And this is a very happy thing. Jupiter, wherever Jupiter is, brings abundance and expansion and growth. And, Jupiter, like Saturn, is a planet of structures, but it's different kinds of structures. It's about expanding the boundaries. It's about building resilient systems. And so for those of you who have Cancer placements, this is a really abundant time for you and really will bring in some potentially really beautiful energy. Jupiter spends about a year in a sign, and it will not retrograde back into Taurus, which is where it is, or I'm sorry, into Gemini, which is where it is now. It will go into Cancer and stay in Cancer. We will have a Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, but it won't go back into the previous sign. So we can expect nice things if you've got placements in Cancer. So Jupiter will expand and, bring in some growth and beautifulness. So that's exciting. Jupiter hasn't been in a sign it's been very happy in for quite a while. Right now it's in Gemini, which is opposite Sagittarius, which is the sign it rules. But Jupiter is very happy in Cancer. It's one of the signs where it's exalted. So I think that brings in some nice things. So I'm looking forward to that Jupiter moving into Cancer. All right. And number 9, the 9th transit worth note is Uranus entering Gemini, which will happen in July. So again, Uranus, slow-moving planet, takes a long time. It's been in Taurus for about the last 7 years. And where Uranus is, it pushes to break down stagnation. It pushes to find paths through, and it doesn't always do it in a really neat way. It tends to be more the lightning strike kind of energy. So it's good. We need Uranian energy. We need that push forward, but it sometimes is a little jarring or shocking. So in Taurus, Jinx is coming back through. I don't know if you'll be able to see him, but he's here. In Taurus, Jupiter has really brought up some things around money and structures and that kind of energy. And in Gemini, I expect that we will see even more about information and communication and connection. I would guess, can you move, Jakes? He's looking. I must have spilled something. Go. Sorry. All right. So with Jupiter and Uranus, I expect that we will see more around, around communications and information exchange things. I would guess that that will be another push into this AI world, um, which will be what it's going to be. So look for that in July, and know that by so Jupiter, or I'm sorry, Uranus will be in Gemini between July 7th, but it will retrograde back into Taurus on November 7th. And then it'll go into Gemini for good in 2026. So it's another one of those that's going to seesaw back and forth. So another one where we're ending whatever that Taurus work was, and we're starting whatever that Gemini work was, and we'll go back and forth in that process. All right, and the 10th transit of note is our fall eclipses, and these will both be in Pisces and Virgo. It'll be on September 7th and September 21st. And again, eclipses bring change. They are very much an indication of movement and of kind of a strobe light effect. Sorry, Jinx is having a moment. I should have closed him out. He was sleeping on the bed. Anyway, you don't care about my cat. So eclipses in Pisces and Virgo, bring change. If you've got placements, again, in Pisces and Virgo, this could be impactful. And if not this eclipse, if you've got placements in Pisces and Virgo, an eclipse over the next couple of years will touch those placements and usually bring some pretty significant change with it. So those are my top 10 transits. I couldn't leave it without giving just a couple honorable mentions. And those honorable mentions are that, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, Neptune, Saturn, and Mars are all going to touch the notes of fate next year, which will be, I think, some societal course correction kind of energy, or just some movement, some emotional connection, kind of new understanding of where we will need to go. There's actually a lot of Mars energy next year between Mars and the outer planets that we'll, of course, get into as we get closer. But it's interesting to start off the year with that Mars retrograde, but Mars is going to play a significant part in our astrology for the next year. The second honorable mention transit, Jupiter will square Saturn for the third time in June. So Jupiter Saturn squares are about the structures of society. They met in December of 2020 for the first time in Aquarius, and then they have been doing this dance. So they met, we had a Jupiter Saturn square in August. Yeah, August or September. A Jupiter Saturn square, August, I think. We will have another one in December. And then the third Jupiter Saturn square will be in June. And interestingly, it will be in Cancer and Aries. So, so the Jupiter and Saturn will be in their next set of signs. So that the first two Jupiter Saturn squares will be when Jupiter is in Gemini and Saturn is in Pisces. So that'll be an interesting shift. There might be some different nuance that comes in with that final Jupiter-Saturn square. So that one's worth note. Again, we'll talk about it more as it gets closer. And then, so Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune are all in reasonably tight, harmonious aspects. And so I just think this is one to keep in mind. These are about larger societal changes. And so there's, we do have this contentious energy right now. And there is just some really peaceful, kind of coordinated energy coming together. And just worth keeping in mind that there is a harmonious drumbeat to all of this. and one that I don't know that we're going to see exactly how it's going to work out, but or not in the short term, because these are outer planets. They move slowly. They go dance back and forth, and so this is going to be in effect for a couple years now. But I'm curious to see how those outer planets, those real societal movers, um, shift things as they're having these nice conversations, nice supportive conversations in the coming years. All right, my friends, that is the astrology of 2025. I wonder what happens if I do this. Look at that. I could turn the sign off. Um, that is the astrology of 2025. Thanks for sticking with me. If this was helpful, please give me a like or a subscribe or a comment. I like all of those things. It lets me know you're out there and it helps people find this channel. And with that, I will say goodbye. Talk to you soon.